Welcome to the Mentally Stronger podcast, the podcast where with every episode, we're learning practical ways to let go of stress and struggles, grow our mental strength, and live a happier, healthier, more meaningful life. I'm your host, Melli O'Brien, co-founder of mindfulness.com and creator of the Deep Resilience Method. I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Let's dive in to today's episode. Today, I'm going to be talking about envy and why they call it the thief of happiness. And I'm also going to give you science-backed practices to help you retrain your mind to operate in ways that grow rather than diminish your mental strength and happiness the way that envy does. So they say that we are living in the age of envy. Now, human beings have always felt envy, of course, but now social media has created a world in which we constantly see these images of everyone being, happy and beautiful and living and flaunting their very best life. And just to add to it, the images are often filtered and polished and airbrushed. And as we scroll through these images of people smiling and posing and showing off their new kitchen, their perfect holiday, their perfectly sculpted bodies, their adorable children, and their huge career wins, what we tend to do when we see all of this is we tend to compare ourselves mentally to these images of hyper-perfectionism, and we end up feeling like we're falling short. So before we go on, what exactly is envy? Envy is a feeling of discontented or resentful longing aroused by someone else's possessions, qualities, or luck. In other words, when you see what somebody else has, you not only wish you had it, but you kind of resent them for having it. Now, Ethan Kross, professor of psychology at the University of Michigan, who studies the impact of social media on our well-being, says that envy is now being taken to an extreme on platforms like Facebook. Now, what happens when we scroll through these images of what he calls photoshopped lives, he says it just exerts a toll on the human mind, the likes of which we have never experienced in the history of our species. So the reason that this is so hard on the human mind is because of the way our minds have evolved. So over the last 200,000 years of human evolution, most of that time, we humans lived in a tribe or a pack. In fact, humans didn't survive on their own back in the caveman days. Rejection from the tribe literally meant death. It wouldn't be long before you got picked off by a big predator or a warring tribe, or just not be able to survive in those harsh conditions of the natural world. So in order to stay in the tribe and survive, we needed the acceptance and the approval of other people in the tribe. So literally the acceptance of other people, feeling special enough, feeling accepted, was literally a survival need. So how did the human mind ensure that it could stay in the pack and not get rejected? Well, it would constantly ask questions to itself like, am I fitting in? Am I doing anything that could get me rejected? Am I contributing enough? Am I special enough? Do they like me? Am I accepted? Am I enough? Sound familiar? Right? This is some of the deepest wiring in the human mind. So envy, in a way, back in the caveman days, was a great survival tool. It motivated us in some way to ensure, to constantly keep tabs on whether we were getting the acceptance of everybody else, and therefore we wouldn't get rejected and we could survive, right? These days, though, this has become not such a helpful thing and is kind of running out of control, you could say. So you've probably experienced yourself just how painful envy can be, right? How much it can affect your mental well-being, your self-esteem. And when we do feel envious, it doesn't necessarily diminish in any way the happiness of the people we're envious of, but it definitely does diminish our own peace of mind and happiness. And what makes envy even harder is that we don't like to admit it or talk about it. It's a really private emotion. We don't even sometimes want to admit it to ourselves that we envy someone. We're ashamed to be feeling it. We feel like we want to be happy for them, but in reality, we feel kind of diminished by what we're seeing. Now, envy can take many forms: competitiveness, resentment, insecurity, feelings of unworthiness, or even ill will towards another person, a coldness or a walled offness towards somebody else. Envy is also really strongly correlated with depression. Numerous studies have shown very strong links between the two. So there's some links to this research in the show notes for anyone who wants to dig into it. So what can we do, though, to counter these feelings of envy, protect our mental well-being, and promote greater mental strength? So I'm going to give you one really practical tip, and then I'm going to give you one really powerful and simple practice. The first tip is to reduce or limit your exposure to environments, habits, and media that are overly stoking the fires of envy within you. That may mean limiting your exposure to something like social media or to certain places, peer groups, or other factors that you know stoke the fires of envy. This can be really helpful to support you while you are going to train your mind in this second habit, this second tip that I'm going to share with you. Now, I want to say in my own life, I identified really, really young that there was a link between me reading beauty magazines. This is before social media. I'm showing my age here. I identified that when I read beauty magazines, I felt like crap afterwards. So I never bought a beauty magazine again. There was a day that I was like, that's enough. I'm going to support my mental strength. I need to give myself a buffer zone here so I'm not stoking something that's hurting me while I'm trying to get stronger. So I found it really, really helpful. And later on, I could expose myself to things like that and not be so affected. So that's a really, really simple, but actually really very, very helpful thing to do. So the practice I'm going to give you is a practice that comes from Buddhism that helps us to retrain the habit of envy within us. It's a practice called sympathetic joy. So here's how you do it. There's 3 steps to this practice. Step 1, every time you catch yourself feeling envy, and it could take many forms, as we said, right? Competitiveness, resentment, feelings of unworthiness, or ill will towards another person. Every time you feel envy of any kind, just take a breath and then name the emotion mentally. So simply saying to yourself mentally, okay, envy is here. And seeing if you can do that with an attitude of compassion and gentleness towards yourself. You know, envy is a difficult emotion to feel. It's a little painful. So seeing if you can give yourself some compassion in that moment. This habit of mental labeling of an emotion, what it does is it allows us to actually step back from the emotion and get a little bit of mental space. So we unhook. We're not so tangled up in the emotion, so it no longer has such a strong grip on us. And with that mental space, we can now make a new choice. Rather than being thrown around by the emotion, we can now have the mental space to choose how we want to relate to that moment and that emotion. Okay, so step 1, take a breath, mentally note envy is here. Step 2 is you're going to switch your focus from the envy of the other person to happiness and appreciation for this person's good fortune. So mentally, you're going to wish them well. You can maybe say something to yourself mentally, like, I'm so happy for your good fortune, or whatever you want to say that comes naturally, you can make it your own. I encourage you in this step to explore whether, in fact, the truth is that deep down you actually do want other people to be happy. There may be this knee-jerk response in the conditioned mind of envy, but that's only one layer of your being. That's only a surface layer. So just explore whether deeper than that surface layer of envy, is it true that deep down you actually want other people to be happy? And if that is the case, take a few moments to connect with that truth within you and take a moment to delight in their happiness. How nice is it to see somebody else doing well, being happy, being healthy? So really rejoicing for that person's good fortune. And then the third step is to take a moment to reflect on the good fortune you already have in your life and feel grateful for it. Allow yourself to feel appreciation for things like the food in the cupboard, a person who cares for you, water in the taps, a roof over your head, fun times that you've had, wins that you've experienced in your life. So in this way, you will find yourself filled with a sense of abundance and happiness for both of you, for the other and for yourself. So instead of laying down neural pathways of lack and resentment and hostility, you're rewiring new patterns in your mind. You're laying down empowering and uplifting pathways of feeling abundant, feeling grateful, feeling connected to the other person, and feeling joy. So this is your mental strength practice for this week. Transform your moments of envy into moments of strength, gratitude, and happiness. The next time, right, the very next time you feel that little twinge of envy, it's following these 3 steps. Mentally name it. Shift your focus to being happy for the abundance and the beauty, not only in their life, but then also in your life too. I really hope you find this practice helpful. Wishing you a wonderful week of practice with this. And I love hearing from you. So if you want to drop me a line on social media and let me know how this practice feels for you, I'd love to hear your stories. And as always, thank you for your practice. Thanks for being here. And I look forward to being here with you again on the next episode of the Mentally Stronger podcast. If you know someone who you think might benefit from listening to this episode, share it with them. Sharing it could really help them to feel better and improve the quality of their life. And if you found this episode helpful, remember to subscribe to the podcast so that you can receive more tips on growing your mental strength, and you can keep practicing along with us every week. If you are wanting more support in becoming mentally stronger, come over to my website and take a look at all the coaching and training options that I have there for you. And I also have a bunch of free resources, including a 5-day mental strength challenge that you can begin right away to kickstart your mental strength, improve your mental well-being, as well as your happiness and resilience. You can find all the links for this in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in. Take care and stay strong.